And there are three main players in the pet food industry. The top two are Mars, yes, a candy company, and Nestle Purina, yes, a candy company. And pet food happens to be the repository for all the waste products from the human food industry. Like, oh, we can't use this for human food. Well, we can put it in pet food, nobody will care. Some of us care. so, those two companies, and then Hills is a distant third in that, but Hills has a lot of influence on the veterinary schools, veterinary education, so unfortunately, when new veterinarians graduate, all they've heard for 4 years is how wonderful these ultra processed foods are, that they are complete and balanced, and that pet owners could never possibly be able to make a homemade diet that is complete and balanced, which is so untrue.
Hi, everyone. Today we have Dr. Judy Morgan, Doctor of Veterinary Medicine. She is a certified veterinary acupuncturist, chiropractor, and food therapist. Dr. Morgan spends much of her time working with rescue groups by assisting in finding, transporting, and fostering neglected animals. What a hero. She is Chief Veterinary Medical Officer for Monkey's House Dog Hospice and Senior Sanctuary, not for monkeys, but for dogs. She is best-selling author of 8 books, hundreds of online and print magazine articles, and host of her own Naturally Healthy Pets podcast. We dig into natural food and health for our beloved animals. Such a beautiful conversation. Thank you for being here. We'll see you on the other side. Dr. Judy Morgan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm very excited to speak to you. I've so many things I'm wondering about. And first thing I'd love to know is, who are you and how did you get here?
That's a really good question. Some days I ask the same thing. Um, so I am an integrated veterinarian. I lean more toward holistic. And so I am trained in acupuncture, chiropractic care, and my big thing is food therapy. I also use herbs and red light therapy, laser, all kinds of different modalities when I was in practice. And now I own Dr. Judy Morgan's Naturally Healthy Pets, which is an online e-commerce and education site. And our goal is to educate pet owners uh, how to keep their pets healthy longer and living a more natural life by avoiding ultra processed food, over vaccination, and the use of chemicals. So that's kind of what I've gotten into, and this is my retirement. I'm not sure how that happened.
Beautiful. So I read a little bit about your journey. How did you go from the more, let's say, traditional and clinical view to the view you have now, which is very informed by, a more, I would say, a more holistic, natural way of approaching life?
Yeah, absolutely. I accidentally took a chiropractic class. That's really what started the whole thing. This postcard came across my desk and it said, "Learn veterinary orthopedic manipulation." I had no idea what that was, but it said I could help my patients heal faster from injuries, from orthopedic surgeries. And my business partner at the time did a lot of orthopedic surgery. So I thought, well, I don't do surgery, but if I could help with the rehab or, getting better, that yay. So I took the class, and a couple of hours into it, I went, I really think this guy's talking about chiropractic. And we had a very traditional practice. So I was sort of like, man, do I stay? Do I go? We paid a lot of money for it. So I stayed. And when I went back to work the following week, it was like, this stuff really works. This is amazing. And so from that, I just said, what else is there to learn? And I learned acupuncture and I started studying herbs. I did a little bit with homeopathy, but it just wasn't my thing. And when you do holistic medicine, every holistic practitioner I know, at some point they find that one modality that they're like, oh, this is it. This is the one for me. And for me, that was really traditional Chinese veterinary medicine, and in particular, food therapy, using food as medicine and designing diets to help whatever issue we have going on. So we have elevated liver enzymes, I can fix that. We have heart disease, I can fix that. We have fluid buildup, I can fix that. And if food isn't enough to do it, then we add in herbs, which is really just a more concentrated form of the food therapy. And then we do lifestyle changes. And the real goal in my practices was, how many medications can we avoid? How many chronic medications can we get rid of? What can we do to really help these animals heal from the inside and not be stuck with chronic inflammatory diseases, chronic endocrine diseases, and a ton of medications? And it was wildly successful. And so when I retired from clinical practice and sold my practices, uh, naturally healthy pets just sort of evolved. It started in my garage as having a few supplements for my clients that were driving 4 or 5 hours each way to get to the office. So it's like, ah, you don't want to, drive all the way here to pick up a supplement, so we can ship things. So it started as that, and then it's just grown into this amazing business. And it is a business, but it's really a way to help a lot of pet owners and a lot of pets and really make big changes. And in practice, I could reach 25 patients a day. Now I can reach millions. So it's been very rewarding, and I hope that this continues. My daughter now is the COO of the company, so hopefully it will continue forever.
Beautiful. So I'm wondering, I would suggest most of the human illnesses, not all of them, but a lot of them are caused by lifestyle, by their, what they eat, the chemicals in their food, on and on and on, right?
Yep.
I
Yep.
think America, we have more obese people than anywhere else in any other country.
Same with our animals.
Same with our animals. So,
Over
yeah,
50% of them are overweight or obese.
amazing. So you could all I'm thinking some of the same causes are happening in our animals,
Absolutely.
and that that's such a huge mind shift for people, because I mean, me personally, I eat organic food. I'm a vegetarian. Like I've spent a lifetime really caring for my body, and yet at the same time I've never really thought about I have thought about, we have a cat, which is like my child, and she's very sensitive and she has some stomach, issues, and the vet put her on a special diet, right? And so I'm just wondering, if I were to come to you and give you the story I just gave you, what kind of feedback would you give me? First thing, looking at the actual what we're feeding the cat
Yeah.
exactly and
So
how we're feeding it.
that would be my first question. What
Yeah.
are you feeding? Are you feeding a species appropriate diet, or are you feeding ultra processed food? 95% of pet owners are feeding ultra processed food, and it
Mm.
is just as horrible for our pets as it is for us. And so for me, like if you look on my website, everything there is human grade. So even though we're using it for pets, all the food is human grade, all of the and unfortunately, labeling for that, because of the rules with FDA, sometimes even though we are using human grade food, we can't label it as such. There's a lot of things they do to hide that, because the big players in the pet food industry don't want people to be able to discern good from bad food. They want people to think that the ultra processed food is species appropriate, and it's not. So, cats, for instance, are obligate carnivores. So, feeding a dry extruded kibble to a cat is absolutely wrong, because it's going to be about 50% carbohydrates. You can't make an extruded kibble without a starch to hold it together. That's just how the process works. And our cats were never made to eat grains and pastas and potatoes and peas, and they just don't do well with it. So when we take these animals and we put them on a very lightly processed or unprocessed, so all of my animals eat raw food because that's what they would eat in nature. So, and I have 9 cats, the healthiest 9 cats you'll ever find. 7 of them are my barn cats, so we have a farm, and, barn cats are very, very important. Some people freak out, "Oh my gosh, your cats live outside." Well, they have 23 acres, very safe environment, and I need them for rodent control. That's a barn without them, really ugly. So and they were all born there. Their mamas came and dropped them in my barn, so it's like, well, that's all they know. My 2 indoor cats are really like when we look at their microbiome, my indoor cats have more stress markers than my outdoor cats because my outdoor cats are living a real cat life. They get to hunt and pounce and eat their prey and spend time in sunlight, and they're eating grass and soil and all the normal cat stuff. So that would be the first thing I would look at is like, is your cat, and if your cat is on a prescription diet or a therapeutic diet, it's on a non-species appropriate diet. I can tell you just because there aren't any. Well, actually, there are a couple now, but most veterinarians would not prescribe them because they're not made by the big veterinary companies.
Right.
Uh, so that would be the first thing I would look at. And I might even do a microbiome test on your cat and look at, how much dysbiosis is there? How much disarray is there in that microbial and fungal um, spreadsheet on your cat? And then we can do things like we do a lot of fecal microbiota transplants. Most of our animals are suffering from leaky gut. People get it as well, and you may or may not be familiar with it, but it's basically the bowel is in a state of inflammation all the time. And so we have swelling in the lining of the gut, and that opens up the blood vessels to being exposed to those large proteins that we're eating. And those, when you're feeding a cat chicken or rabbit or beef or whatever it is you're feeding them, that's a foreign protein to their body. Their body says, "I recognize cat." And so if the bloodstream in the bowel is being exposed to all these foreign proteins, the immune system is kind of like, maybe we should attack that. And then we get more inflammation and, vomiting, diarrhea, whatever. Usually it's not a food allergy, although it gets termed that. It's really just we need to heal the gut. We need to get rid of that inflammation and soothe everything, calm everything down. And once we have that, then we need feed a species appropriate diet and they'll do fine. So for instance, in my freezer I have a freezer for the dogs and a freezer for the cats because we have a lot of animals. And so we go through a lot of food. But if you look in either one of those freezers, you are going to find probably a dozen different meat sources in each freezer. So we do a lot of rotation. They eat duck, rabbit, goose, um, chicken, turkey, beef, pork. There's just a ton of stuff in there. Uh, and that's what they're meant to. I actually have ground mice in my freezer. I didn't
Ooh.
grind them, but we've had ground guinea pig, goat, lamb. I mean, you name it. But that's if you think about what my cats are doing that are outside, yes, I'm feeding them all kinds of different things, but they're also catching mice and rats and birds and rabbits and squirrels and, you know, do our woodland critters appreciate that? Not really, but that's what's natural for them.
When you say species appropriate, what do you mean by that?
So species appropriate for a cat, they're an obligate carnivore. That's a carnivorous diet. So they're metosauruses. When we look at formulating diets for cats, we are using about 96% meat, bone, and organs. So we do feed bone if they're eating raw food. They can digest raw bone, no problem. We don't ever want to feed cooked bone. So a species appropriate diet for a cat is going to be meat, bone, and organ. And then they do need a fiber source. In the wild, that fiber source, maybe they chew on a little bit of fresh grass. But they'll also eat the stomach contents of their prey. So they're usually eating an herbivore, and that herbivore is going to have some grass and fermented vegetation in their stomach, so they'll eat that. They also will eat the fur and the feathers. That's a great fiber source. Why do they need that fiber? That fiber is the the food source for the bacteria in the gut. And so that's needed, that food source, so that all those good bacteria in the gut are working to make a healthy immune system. They're making short chain fatty acids that our brain needs. They help cells from the immune system to activate and do their job. So we need that little bit of fiber. Now, if we're looking at dogs, they are not obligate carnivores. They're sort of maybe omnivorous carnivores. If we wanted to feed a vegetarian or vegan diet, a dog would do better with it than a cat. In my practice, if I had vegetarian clients or vegan clients who wanted to make their cats into vegetarians or vegans, I would fire them as clients. I would not keep them as a client. I'd tell them to go get a rabbit instead. Uh, you need to get an herbivore. Cats, I don't care if you feed them the most well supplemented vegetarian diet in the world, they're going to have immune system problems. It just doesn't work very well. We can't fool Mother Nature. Mother Nature says, "Hey, cats need to eat meat." So that's where we get into a lot of trouble with our animals when we feed them inappropriately. And like I said, 95% of the people are feeding ultra processed food, and so it's not an appropriate diet.
Yeah, I mean, as you speak, I'm feeling like our cat is very malnutrition. It's because she's about 11 years old and she eats the dry food, and then we feed her at night the wet food, but she only licks it. So she's not actually getting any of the substance.
Well, and the problem with those therapeutic wet foods, if you read the ingredient label, you're still going to find a lot of starches and fillers in there. When we look at these larger pet food companies, they're answering to their investors. They're looking at the bottom line. Which is cheaper to put into a product, a grain or a meat source? Grains and starches, potatoes, peas, so much cheaper. And they know that they can formulate it to keep your pet alive, and keep their weight on and make their blood parameters look okay. But there's a difference between surviving and thriving. And unfortunately, uh, I see it on social media all the time. People say what about their cat or their dog? Oh, he lived to 11 or 12. He had a good long life. And I want to cry when I see that, because I'm like, he had half a life. Our cats should be living well into their 20s, and our dogs, I don't care what size they are, should be living into their late teens or early 20s. And we're just not seeing that. We're seeing people say, oh, we had all these chronic problems. We were always in and out of the vet office. We're there every month with chronic ear infections, with allergies and itching and diarrhea, and, just nothing going right. And that's not normal. We've come to the point where we accept that as normal. It's not. It is absolutely not. And we do a ton of rescue work. Like I said, all the cats that I have, the two older ones that live in the house, they were born in my practice from shelter mamas, and the ones in the barn were born in the barn because stray mamas showed up and said, "Here, have kittens." All of our dogs are rescues that have come. Some of them through private. Like, we have one that came through a private breeder. He was born with hydrocephalus and all kinds of issues, obviously can't be sold. He came from one of the best breeders in the country. And she's like, it's an oopsie every once in a while, genetics throws you a Fruit Loop. She said, what do I do with him? And silly me. Oh, he can live with me because, I take all the special needs kids. But most of our dogs are rescues that came from puppy mills, came from hoarding situations, came, from really bad beginnings. And most of our dogs are living to 17, 18, 19, even though they got off to a bad start. So it's never too late to make those changes. But we need to make those changes, and it needs to be made across the board.
And so what do you do in a situation like mine where I've been feeding this cat its whole life? Is there a transition phase into a more natural view?
So dogs are so much easier. Every rescue dog that I've gotten, I don't allow kibble in my house. I don't own any, so pretty much every dog I bring in, that's what they've been on. Dogs are great. You give them something different to eat, and they're like, "Oh, good food." Cats go, "That's not what I eat." Cats are really difficult. Um, and for the dogs, because I feed raw, a lot of times if they've been fed kibble, they don't recognize raw meat as a food. Like I'll feed, give them a really high quality, well formulated diet, and they go, "I don't even know what that is." So I usually switch them over to gently cooked, and that's easier to, that's a little more recognizable for them, and then we'll switch over to our raw. With the cats, particularly if they've been raised on kibble, um, kibble is sprayed with something called a palatant, and there is a lot of science that goes into what is addictive for cats. And that's what is sprayed on dry kibble because otherwise there's no way they would ever touch it because it's a dry, burnt brown ball with no flavor. It's been cooked to death. So it's sprayed with something that's addictive, just like, certain foods, like a lot of chips, Doritos, a lot of processed foods, they're sprayed they have additives like MSG and, umami tastes that make us go, "Oh, I can't get enough of that and I wanna eat more." Why do you wanna keep going back to McDonald's? Because 'Cause it's got things added in there that give you that addictive feeling, and so that is a big thing, particularly in cat food, because we all know that cats are picky, they're a pain in the butt. They like it today, they hate it tomorrow, next week they like it again, and then they're never gonna eat it again. That's a cat. Um, so when I graduated from vet school, yes, all cats were to be fed dry food, and all of my cats always were fed dry food, and then I kept switching to what I thought was better dry kibble. There's really no such thing. But, then I learned, "Hey, these are little tigers and mountain lions. They're supposed to be eating prey." Okay, how do I make my cats do that? When I first showed them raw food, they literally batted it around the house like it was a hockey puck and said, "I bleh." So what I discovered is there are freeze-dried raw foods. So it has more of the texture. It's a harder texture, like a dry kibble would be. So what I did with I think I had like 5 cats at the time, and they were all kibble fed. I now call that kitty crack. And if you ever give it to my cats who have never even seen it, I guarantee they would dive in because it's got addictive things in it that make them want it. My cats will never see it, because I don't want them to get that in their little brains. So, but if you take the freeze-dried foods, and since your cat has some GI issues, one, I would use very high quality, and two, I would use a novel protein. So something like rabbit or venison, something that so most of the typical foods are going to have some sort of chicken in them. Chicken is it's the cheapest protein, so it's the most commonly used. So we usually avoid that just because it's like, oh, they've been, hyper exposed to that and their body's already ticked off about that one. Um, so we'll find something that they haven't eaten before. Pork usually works pretty well. And so all of these freeze-dried foods are in a ton of we have whitefish would be another good one. We have freeze-dried whitefish as well. So I would take that and I would take some of the freeze-dried pieces and I would crumble them in with their dry food, just over the top. And what happens is when they're going for their dry food, they're going to end up eating some of these pieces of the other stuff. And then they kind of go, "Ooh, that's not so bad." And so every day you add a little more of that and take out a few more kibble and a little
Mm.
more, take out a few more kibble. It took me 6 months with my first cats. It was a very slow process. Um, Once I got them changed over, no problem at all. Then they would eat anything, whether it was freeze dried, frozen, raw. And if you're feeding a refrigerated or frozen product, you always want to warm it up to as close to body temperature as possible. So room temperature at least, so somewhere between like 70 and 100 degrees is where you want to serve that food. Cats are much more likely to eat their food if it has a lot of smell. How do we get a lot of smell? Warm it up.
Warm it up.
Warming releases the
Mhm.
aromas. So with the freeze dried food, it's meant to be rehydrated. So we want to bring it back up to that moisture level of prey. And that's one of the problems with dry kibble. It has like 6% moisture. It is so not what our cats are supposed to eat. So the whole idea is that as we're adding in that freeze dried, we're rehydrating it as we go. At the beginning, you don't need to add any water because you want them to eat it. And then eventually, the goal is to have it rehydrated and be more of a moist food because that's what your cat's looking for. And what you'll find is once you get them on that, they quit drinking water because they don't need to drink water anymore. Cats are not big drinkers anyway. So they're sort of a desert animal. They don't drink much and they get their moisture from their diet. And when we're feeding them a dry kibble, they're not getting that. So our cats are running around really in a constant state of dehydration.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what kind of changes in the biomarkers have you seen when you take an animal, dog or cat, from a traditional diet to a more natural-based diet?
One of the big things that we'll see is their urine concentration goes way down. So instead of having like on most cats, if we do run a urine sample on them, if they're eating a dry kibble, their urine is going to be super, super concentrated. And that's why we get so many crystals in the urine. Think of that fifth grade science experiment. You take a glass of water, you shake salt in it, the salt dissolves until you get it saturated enough, and then it makes a clump in the bottom of the glass. That's what happens with our animals that we feed dry food. They can't drink enough to keep up with that, and so their urine becomes super saturated. We get the crystals that fall out, and that's how we end up with cats with urinary obstructions. It's simple science, fifth grade science. So one of the first things we'll see when we get them on this high moisture species appropriate diet is their urine concentration will go way, way, way down. So if they've been making crystals, they stop making crystals, they urinate easier, their kidney function is better. And the part of the problem with biomarkers, like looking at blood tests, the body will keep things in homeostasis in the blood. So your cat's kidneys may not be functioning at their maximum, but the blood work is going to look normal until they finally give up the ghost. And our animals and us, we can survive with only 10% kidney function. So by the time you start seeing those changes in the biomarkers, you're in deep doo doo. So we don't wanna stress the kidneys, we don't wanna push them to get to that point. It's like, "No, let's give them what God said they're supposed to eat." God said cats are supposed to eat mice and bunnies and birds. They're very high moisture.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I love that. Just thinking about the animal as an extension of, you know, who we are as people and caring for them in a different way and really bringing them towards a more holistic approach. That's why I loved when I saw what you were doing. I was like, I don't like, I live in a very, I live in Ojai, California, which is very progressive, and there are no holistic animal care people around. There's just straight up veterinarians do the veterinarian thing. And
Where are you
why
in
do you,
California?
I'm in Ojai.
North, south?
It's
I
it's
don't know this.
uh it's south. It's about an hour and a half north of LA, near Santa
Okay.
Barbara. Yeah, near Santa Barbara.
God, I feel like you should have somebody in Santa Barbara.
Yeah, it could be. Why do you think more people haven't taken this approach to their animals?
Well, what we're seeing is change being driven from the pet parent side, not from the veterinary side. So when we look at what is being taught in the veterinary schools, they are heavily, heavily influenced by big pharma and big pet food. And there are three main players in the pet food industry. The top two are Mars, yes, a candy company, and Nestle Purina, yes, a candy company. And pet food happens to be the repository for all the waste products from the human food industry. Like, oh, we can't use this for human food. Well, we can put it in pet food, nobody will care. Some of us care. So those two companies, and then Hills is a distant third in that, but Hills has a lot of influence on the veterinary schools, veterinary education, veterinary sphere. So, unfortunately, when new veterinarians graduate, all they've heard for 4 years is how wonderful these ultra processed foods are, that they are complete and balanced, and that pet owners could never possibly be able to make a homemade diet that is complete and balanced, which is so untrue. A lot of pet owners can and do it. Unfortunately, what happens is we get what's called recipe drift. So somebody will, a pet owner will start out with the best of intentions. They'll have a complete and balanced recipe that they're using. Their pet's doing well. And then a week comes along and they're like, I didn't get to the store. I don't have any chicken livers this week. I couldn't find any gizzards. I ran out of cod liver oil. And then they just start eliminating things that are really necessary. So veterinarians are very against homemade. They're very against raw. And again, that is because CDC has a statement on their website saying that animals should not be fed raw food. And that is copied on AVMA, AHA, it's taught at all the vet schools. The part that they overlook is that more people have died. Actually, people have died from handling dry, processed, extruded kibble that has been contaminated with salmonella. And nobody's ever died from raw pet food being contaminated by salmonella. So, it's just, well, we'll just ignore the facts and we'll just make these blanket statements. So it's not, when you go to your veterinarian, you say, I want to feed a species appropriate diet and I want to feed, a meat based or raw. I mean, gently cooked is okay, but there's no animals in the wild who are cooking their food. They're certainly not microwaving it. Um, and you say you want to do that, and your veterinarian goes, like, oh my gosh, you swore at me. How dare you? They're very against it because it's what they're taught. And they don't know any other way to do it. They don't do the research to find out. There's a great study that was done in Europe quite a few years ago, but they took canned foods and kibble foods made by the big players, and they actually analyzed them in a lab to see if they were complete and balanced and if they did actually meet the minimum standards. And over 90% of the canned foods did not meet the standards, and over 60% of the dry kibble was not complete and balanced. So even just saying, if you feed this food, it's guaranteed to be complete and balanced. No, not. You can probably do very well at home. Uh, so, so that's one of the things I've been trying to educate people on. We have a lot of free recipes on our website, but the thing is, if you're starting with a complete and balanced recipe, make sure you don't leave out ingredients.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's talk vaccines because we took our cat last year to get the rabies vaccine and brought her home, and she was foaming at the mouth and was looked like she was going to die. We called the vet who'd given the vaccine, and they were closing, and they said take it to the hospital. And we rushed her to the hospital, and they gave her antihistamine, and then she was fine. But had we not paid attention to her when she got home, she would have died for sure. So what is your view
Well, I
on
just got one of
vaccines? Yeah.
those emails this week from someone
Oh,
who had their dog in, and it was given a vaccine, and it was dead 20 minutes later. And it was still in the vet office. That makes it even worse. He sent me the records, and I looked at it and said, well, that was handled completely wrong, and he lost his dog, unfortunately. So, our pets are definitely over vaccinated. And now that your cat had that reaction, your cat should never get a vaccine again, ever, ever. Your cat just wants to have a reaction. And so the traditional veterinarian will say, oh, no, it's fine. We'll just give him an antihistamine before we vaccinate him next time.
that's exactly what they said.
Yeah, no vaccines. Get an exemption. Does your cat go outside?
Yeah. Yes.
Which vaccine did it react to?
The rabies.
Yeah. And you're stuck. See that one, you're a little bit stuck, but it is a 3-year vaccine, so you don't have to worry about it for 3 years. Then you might be able to get a titer, which is a blood test that says, hey, look, we've got all these antibodies to rabies. And maybe they'll write you an exemption. Every state is different. There's about 15 states that will allow exemptions for reasons like that. Um, but the rest of the states go, yeah, we don't care. Great. I kind of care. But what we do know is that the core vaccines, so for cats, that's distemper and rabies, they may last a lifetime. Those kitten shots that you
Mm,
got might last a lifetime.
mm,
We can do a blood test called a titer to see if they're still protected. And so my analogy for this is you can get a blood test to find out if you're pregnant. Well, you can't, but a woman could. You can get a blood test to find out if you're pregnant. If it's positive, you're pregnant. If you get injected with more sperm, you don't get more pregnant. You are or you aren't. So for vaccines, if they have a positive titer and they have antibodies running around in their bloodstream, they're protected. If you give another vaccine, they're not more protected, they're just still protected, unless they have a reaction and then they might be dead. So I'm a huge fan of titers. Unfortunately, most veterinarians hate titers. They hate clients who come in and say, I want a titer. I don't want to just vaccinate. Because it's more work. It's more work to draw blood, particularly from a cat, than it is to just poke them with a vaccine. Titers are very effective. They're very good. And if you gave a vaccine to your 2-year-old animal and it's going to last for 10 years, why do you want to give them another booster every single year or every 3 years or every 5
mhm.
years or whatever it is that they're calling for? The AVMA and AHA guidelines state that core vaccines should be given no more often than every 3 to 5 years. Yet a very large percentage of veterinarians still recommend annual vaccines, and boarding, grooming, and daycare facilities want annual vaccines, which is just means we have not done a good job educating them to the fact that we don't need to give those every year.
Yeah,
Like my outdoor cats, they had one rabies, they had one distemper. Um, I don't even
for their
bother
whole
titering.
life.
Yeah,
For
well,
their whole
so
life.
far,
Yeah.
so
Hmm.
far. At some point, I might give them another rabies. There was, uh, if they ever found a rabid animal anywhere in a reasonable distance from us, then I would be more likely to say, well, probably should do that. Um, so we have to look at the lifestyle and the environment of where the pet lives. So for people with an indoor cat that lives in an apartment and never sees the light of day outside, why would we be poking them with things? They're never exposed to anything. Um, so we have to, the problem with vaccines is we need to treat every animal as an individual. We need to really look at what is the lifestyle of that pet. Do I have a 2-pound dog that uses a pee pad in my apartment and never goes outside unless it's in my pocketbook? Or do I have a hunting dog that is out in the fields with other dogs, being exposed to other things? Uh, Everything is individual, and it can be very difficult to find veterinary practices where they will stand there and have that conversation with you of, yeah, I don't take my dogs to boarding, grooming, daycare. Why would I want a kennel cough or an influenza vaccine? They just don't need it. They don't have exposure. My dogs never see other dogs. They don't leave my farm. So why would I need to do all of that? Um, for people who travel a lot with their pets, it gets a little stickier. But you really do need to look at your individual pet. And of all, I've written 9 books, but the one that it goes into the vaccines the deepest is Raising Naturally Healthy Pets. The vaccine chapter is the longest chapter because it talks about for each one of the diseases, how is it spread? What are the risk factors? Is it treatable? Is this something that they have a good chance of dying, or are they just going to cough for a week? Uh, and then you can make decisions. And it also talks about how long the vaccines last, because some vaccines are only good for a year, other vaccines may be good for 9 or 10.
Right. Right. So you're not against vaccines, but you
Not
want to be
totally,
smart.
but
You
the older
yeah.
I get and the more we keep getting yanked around by the government, the less in favor I am. And one of the big problems that we have right now is that they've now come up with messenger RNA vaccines for our pets. So
Mm.
rabies vaccine, I just got an email about that one this week. The pet developed an autoimmune disease a week after being given the messenger RNA rabies vaccine. So that's not good. For our cats, there's a messenger RNA leukemia vaccine. I would highly recommend running away from that. And I believe there's a kennel cough messenger RNA vaccine. So, not a fan of those at all. They're brand new, and with any drug or chemical that comes down the line for our pets, I don't want to hear about it from a drug rep until it's been out for at least 5 years. Somebody else can use their patients as the guinea pigs to see what kind of bad reactions we're going to get. Uh, We've got some things on the market right now that are killing animals right and left. And to get things pulled by the FDA, once they get approved, it is almost impossible. So, for people who are listening, I would run for the hills if my vet recommended Librela or Silencia, which are injections for arthritis. Really, really bad. Silencia is the cat one, Librela is the dog one. I would run for the hills if my vet recommended any of the isoxazoline flea and tick chemicals. So Bravecto, NexGard, Simparica, Credelio. They just came out one that's a 12-month injection. And when
Oh.
you give these things, you can't get them back out once you inject. If they have a bad reaction, you're stuck with that. You can't get it back out of there, and there is no antidote for any of these. So, you know, you hope your pet lives long enough to get through it is really what it boils down to. And an awful lot of them are dying, and it's not good. And so that's why for me it is so critical that we educate pet parents and we let them know, hey, ask questions. And if your veterinarian is prescribing a medication for your pet, the first words out of your mouth should be, what are the side effects? What should I watch for? Even with a vaccine, like you found out, hey, could there be any side effects to this? What should I be watching for? Because if you weren't vigilant and didn't know what to watch for, you could have a dead animal. And uh, if they tell you there's no side effects, either they just don't know or they haven't seen them personally. So, in their mind, there's no side effects. But we all carry around these little miniature computers with us. Get out your miniature computer in the exam room, put the drug in, and say, what are the side effects? And it'll come up. And so these ones that I've just been talking about, they have their own Facebook and social media groups talking, with hundreds of thousands of people who have lost their pets. And, if that pops up right away, say no.
Just say no. You mentioned fleas and ticks. I'm curious what your view on how to approach that subject with an animal.
Yeah, so we use all natural preventative, even my barn cats who live outside all the time. So there's a couple things that go into this. First of all, if your pet has a healthy immune system, parasites don't like them. Parasites parasitize the weak. So if I have a client with 10 cats and they get a flea infestation, 8 or 9 of those cats are going to have a flea or no fleas. And then there's going to be the one old dinosaur dehydrated kidney failure cat who's going to have 1,000
Mm.
because parasites parasitize the weak. So we want to keep our pets as healthy as possible and keep their immune systems healthy. And then we have less parasite problems. So my outdoor cats go hunting in the woods surrounding our property all the time. And if I pull off out of 7 cats 1 or 2 ticks a year, that's a lot. They just don't bring them home. We have ticks. If I walk my dogs through the woods, yeah, I'm gonna see ticks crawling on them. I gotta pull them off. They don't like to attach. My dogs don't taste good. Um, Fleas, yes, my cats play with mice and bunnies and squirrels and things that have fleas outside. So the way that I can't put collars on them. So we have ultrasonic tags, we have scalar wave tags, we have essential oil sprays, so many things we can use. My barn cats can't wear a collar, so they can't wear a tag. and they really don't like being sprayed. Like, I get near them with a spray bottle, and they're like, "Uh-uh." I mean, that's a cat thing. But we happen to have a natural powder that has neem, yarrow, and diatomaceous earth, and my barn cats are not, like, snuggly pick them up and hug them cats. So if you get to pet them, you're doing pretty well. So and they really like my mom, who's 89 and lives with us. So I'll say, "Mom, you gotta treat the cats for the fleas." And she'll go get the powder, this natural powder. She puts it in her hand, and then she pets a cat. And that's how we treat our outdoor cats for fleas. Once a week, we pet the cat. And if they won't let us pet them as they're running by, we're shaking on top of them. And that's enough to do the job for our cats. And it's really interesting. Out of the 7, it's kind of like that family I was talking about. 6 of them, beautiful coats, never have a problem. We have 1 who has a bit of a flea allergy. She's the oldest of the group. She's the mama. And so you'll see her kind of chewing at her tail a little bit and being a little more itchy because she tastes better than, her immune system is not as good as the other cats. So the other problem is that, especially for people who have a house pet or a dog who just goes for walks or out in the yard, if you're seeing fleas or ticks on your animal, that's only 5% of the life cycle of the flea or tick. And so we all go crazy saying, "What do I put on the dog? What do I put on the cat? I have to wash the dog." No, we need to treat the other 95%. The other 95% is living in your carpet, in your
Mm.
sofa cushions, and in your yard. So we've got to get rid of that. We've got to do the environmental thing. Now, for my outdoor cats who have 23 acres and, the neighbor's property, I can't treat that property. For my backyard, for my dogs, I can put beneficial nematodes down, which are sort of almost microscopic little bugs, but they prevent fleas and ticks from maturing to adults.
Mm.
So it breaks the life cycle. And so that's really our goal is we have to break the life cycle. When I lived in New Jersey, almost everybody has a basement or a crawl space. And so people would go crazy vacuuming and treating the house and treating the pets, and they'd forget about the basement and the crawl space. And that very commonly is where your source of infestation is coming
Mm.
from. So you have to really think about where could these be hiding out. And it's interesting. My daughter, when I lived in New Jersey, my daughter came to visit. She had just adopted a brand new little kitten off Craigslist. She brought him to visit for Thanksgiving. Adorable little guy. Came with a million fleas. I was like, "Thanks for bringing that to my house. That's great. I've got 10 dogs, I've got 5 cats, and now I've got fleas." Luckily, we didn't have carpet, but I went crazy vacuuming, washing all the beds, doing everything. And I did this week after week. I was like, where are these coming from? I'm just ripping my hair out. And then our cleaning lady was there one day and I said, "Patty, we are ripping this house apart because I'm going out of my mind." We had a recliner rocker. I flipped it upside down, and under the base of that, there was all these hairballs and fleas. And that was our source of infestation because the little kitten had managed to get in there
Mm.
and hang out. That was his little hidey hole. And I just hadn't moved that particular piece of furniture in all of this process. So sometimes you have to be the sleuth and say, well, where are they coming from?
Mm.
My mother's dog one time got infested with mange, sarcoptic mange. Very, very itchy. The dog was itching her skin off. I mean, it went and
Wait.
bald. It was awful. And could not figure out what this was. Sarcoptes can yet be very elusive for the diagnosis. So it took me about 8 months to actually figure out that that's what the problem was. And once I treated that, great. And then she got
Mm.
reinfested. I'm like, what? Under her deck, she had a groundhog that had moved in. It happened to be
Mm.
a mangy groundhog that had moved in under the deck. So we had to get the groundhog to move out in order to solve the problem. So, sometimes you have to be that detective to try to figure out, all right, they keep getting fleas. Where are they coming from? They keep getting
Yeah.
ticks. Where are they coming from? If you have an outdoor cat who's wandering through the neighborhood and through the woods, it's a little trickier. So
Yeah.
then we do have to focus a little bit more on the animal themselves. But it really, don't forget about the environmental factor in that.
Yeah. Great recommendation. Find the source. What is your view on CBD for animals?
Love it.
Love it. Okay, I
Love it.
didn't
Uh,
expect that.
yeah, no,
Yeah,
most better oh, no. Most veterinarians are not allowed to prescribe it or talk about it. Like
they won't talk about it.
the state of
Yeah.
California passed a law that veterinarians are not allowed to talk about CBD. Now, who should be most qualified to talk about a product like that for animals? Let's see, that would be veterinarians, but they're not allowed to. California's weird. And it's different in every state. So I sold it in my practice for many years. I prescribed
Mm.
so much CBD. I had it on my website at the beginning, and I didn't know that I was not allowed to sell it. So I guess I was flying under the radar. But I did find out. I was vacationing in Costa Rica, and my son, who was running my website at the time, called me and he said, and he also had a website for people that had some supplements, including CBD. And he called me and he said, I just got shut down and PayPal took all my money and won't give it back. And I'm banned from using PayPal for the rest of my life because he was selling CBD products.
Mhm.
And I said, oh, could you take the CBD off my website right now? And he did. And 4 months later, PayPal sent me the you're banned for life. My husband got banned for life. I got banned for life, and they kept all my money.
Wow.
So yeah, I love
Crazy.
CBD.
Crazy. Yeah, we talk our cat is quite anxious and we talked to our vet and he's like, "Oh, I can't." He wouldn't say anything about
He
it.
can't.
He can't. So we started to give it to her and she's so much calmer. It's a night and day difference.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a night and day difference.
Right, and that is so much healthier for her than what the veterinarian would prescribe, which is gabapentin.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah, that's what they
nightmare.
tried to give us. Yeah, and
Yeah,
we're like,
yeah.
"No."
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
good for you. Yeah, CBD
Yeah.
is great. CBD may help with the gut thing too, but the
Okay.
true thing with the gut thing is getting the diet fixed.
Yeah, I know you're totally right. I definitely wanna get some of the freeze dried,
Yep. Yeah, I would start with the freeze dried.
yeah.
So
I'll
if
start with that.
Yeah, if you look on our website, which is naturallyhealthypets.com, you'll see a bunch of different freeze-dried foods. You'll see brand. So, and I don't care where you buy food. You can go buy it at, if you have a small
I'm buying from
independent
you,
pet
baby.
retailer. But the independent pet stores, not the big box stores, but the independent stores. Like if you walk in there and they have freezers or refrigerators full of food,
Mhm.
then you know you're standing in the right place because if they're
Okay.
selling raw or freeze-dried food, um, it makes me a little bit nuts because some of these stores are so good and the people are so knowledgeable that own them and work in them, and yet they'll still have big piles of kibble. And what they say is, well, we need to do that in order to survive. And I'm like, no, you don't.
Mm.
You just, it's all about just educating, educating, educating. So if somebody comes in and they're looking for kibble, then that's your big opening to say, no, I have something much better. Once people convert and they see the differences in the health of their pet, there's no going back. And
Mm.
so I switched my pets, oh man, 25 years ago. Yeah, 25 years ago ish was when I first started dabbling in raw. And I was that veterinarian that people would come to, and I was kind of holistic. And they'd say, oh, I want to feed raw. Oh, no, bacteria, blah, blah, blah. I'm still spewing the crap. And then I started feeding raw to my pets. And back then it was hard to find, expensive to get,
Mm.
for shipping was crazy. And I had a big dog at the time and a few little ones, but I did it, and then after they'd been on it for a month or 2, I was like, "Well, why would you not do this?" It's kind of amazing. The interesting thing with kitty cats, I mean, you may or may not have a litter box because your cat goes outside, but
3.
3, so there you go. When we feed our animals, uh, highly processed food that has a lot of fillers in it, you
Mm.
get the volume of stool that's just kind of amazing for the size of the animal, and the odor is not good.
Mhm.
Uh, my raw-fed cats, their stool is kind of white, chalky hard, doesn't have any odor, and if one of them has, poops outside the litter box somewhere in the house, I usually find it when I kick it because you don't smell it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's dry and kind of hard. So it's totally different. And for people who have indoor cats, let me tell you, I would never go back to the stinky litter boxes that I used to have.
Yeah. Okay, in all your years of practice, what's the craziest thing you ever saw in the practice?
Man, I've seen so many crazy things. I when we first opened our second practice, uh, we were brand new and nobody knew who we were, what we were doing. But this guy walked in and I didn't even see an animal, and he started saying, "Well, my pet has an upper respiratory infection. I need you to give it an injection of this particular antibiotic." He was very specific, and I was like, "What?" I said, "You don't even have a pet with you." He said, "Yes, I do." And the guy had long hair, and he lifts his hair up, and sitting on his shoulder is a blue-tongued skink, which is a little lizardy thing.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I don't do anything with scales. So, and I was like, I don't even know what that is. And it sticks his tongue out and it's blue. And I'm like, well, I get the name. Okay. Uh, and I said, how do you know it has a respiratory infection? So he told me, and I was like, well, that makes sense. And I said, how do you know this is what it needs? He said, well, because we've done this before, different vet. And I'm like, well, if you'll tell me where and how to give the injection, I'll be happy to do that. But I'm just telling you right now, I don't have a clue.
Yeah. Great.
So that one was a little weird.
Yeah.
As a whole, and now we have we raise meat and egg chickens, so we process our own chickens and a lot of eggs, and we also have dairy cows, and it's another whole disaster. Uh, but I've now had to become the chicken doctor. Like we had one who broke a leg, I had to set a leg. We had
Oh,
one that had a sour crop. I had to learn how to treat that. I'm like, I don't know anything about chickens. I didn't learn this in school.
that's
So
awesome.
you do what you got to do. I mean, and then we bought cows, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with a cow. We had a calf born the day after Christmas. It's a little boy, and my daughter says, "Well, we have to band him to castrate him like before he's a week old." And I'm like, "Do what?" So I'm
So
learning.
good. Yeah, we all
You're
are. We all
you're
are.
never too old to learn.
That's for sure. Okay, let's end with a little talk about hospice and hospice for animals. And yeah, I just love that I saw you were doing some of that work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, because I have so many tools in my toolbox, I'm kind of the never say never person. So one of my I've got so many good stories with animals with terminal diseases. So I
Mm,
happen to be the chief veterinary officer for Monkey's House Senior Dog Hospice and Sanctuary in New Jersey, been in existence for 10 or 12 years. And the only way a dog gets into Monkey's House is to have a terminal diagnosis and be at a high kill shelter. Nobody to love it, nobody who wants it, and a shelter who won't take care of it. Um, so they're very special cases, and a lot of times those dogs come into hospice care with he's only got a day or 2 to live. Well, we've rarely had that happen, and the longest resident is 7 years in. So never say never, and one of my little guys was diagnosed with bladder cancer when he was 15. He had just turned 15, and he had 5 tumors in his bladder. Not able to have anything done surgically, whatever. Not that I would have done chemo, surgery, whatever anyway. But I said, "Well, let me make a protocol for this guy and let's see what happens." And he lived 2 more years. He lived to he was 17.
wow.
The last ultrasound I did on him, the 5 tumors were down to 3, and they were much smaller, and he didn't die from his cancer. He basically died of old age. Uh, so for me, hospice care is not sitting there waiting for them to die. It's not, um, hospice is very active. It is active care. It is comfort care.
Mm,
So we want to make sure that there's no pain. We do that in a lot of different ways. Try to do it as naturally as possible, but if we're backed into a corner and we need to give a drug, we're going to find the lowest possible dose that makes them comfortable. It's about getting good nutrition into them. not always, like, I don't really care so much if it's 100% complete and balanced as much as I care about we gotta get calories in. Um, I had so many, patients that would g I remember when I was very early in my holistic career, a family came in, very teary-eyed. They had a big Doberman mix, and she was down, couldn't get up, and she had cancer. I hadn't seen her in a long time, and they were bringing her in for euthanasia, but clearly nobody was ready. I mean, this family
Mm,
was just torn up. And so I just looked at them and I said, "Well, I can't make her better, but I could probably give you a little more time if you're willing to do some work." And they're like, "We'll do anything." I said, "Okay." I designed a diet for the dog. And, this is a dog who had eaten kibble her whole life, and she was not about to touch that anymore. And I said, "Can you cook for this dog?" "Yeah, we can cook for this dog." I said, "Okay, this is," and I designed my diets based on what do I need to help? Which part of the body needs help? What are we doing? So I designed a diet for them, and then I think I probably prescribed CBD and some mushrooms and, all of our things that we know can help the immune system straighten its butt out.
mm,
And I sent them home and I said, "Let me know how it goes." I didn't see them for 3 months, and when they came back, the dog was up walking around.
mm,
She hadn't been obese, she had lost the weight, but she was walking around, and things were drastically different. She still had cancer, and I said, "Well, how's it going?" "It's going great, doc. We are so thankful for this time that we know we're still gonna lose her, but, these 3
mm.
months have been the best 3 months of her life." "Okay." A
Beautiful.
and so when it was time for them to say goodbye to the dog, they'd had that extra time and they were ready,
Mm,
and then when everybody came in, it was a very peaceful transition
mhm,
because they had had that time. So that's what hospice care is about, and whether it's, you know, liver disease, heart disease, kidney disease, I don't care, cancer, whatever. The goal is comfort care and quality time. I have no desire to keep them alive just to keep them alive. I have a desire for you to have quality time together. So I had a client with a dog that had amelanotic melanoma in her jaw and not treatable. And the dog was only like 5. And she'd been raw fed, under vaccinated. Like the owner did everything right. Bad genetics, I don't know. And so she decided that she would go ahead and try radiation because the dog was pretty young. And the dog hated it. And by the third trip there, I mean, the dog just was balking and, the technicians are coming out and they're trying to manhandle the dog into the door. And the client went, "Stop, we're done." And so she turned around, came back to my office, and my office happened to be across from a beautiful park along the river. And she came to me and she said, I can't do this to her. She doesn't want to do it. I don't want to do it. We're done." And I said, "That's a great decision. You're honoring her decision." And I said, "It's a beautiful park. Go for a walk." She came back about 4
mhm,
hours later. And so she just honored what the dog
mm,
said she wanted, and she ended up having to put her down not too long after that, but she spent really good time rather than that battling time, and
mm,
I think that that is so much more critical for us to be able to get to that point, and unfortunately, a lot of what hospice care for our pets is about is also caring for the caretaker.
mhm,
And so, as humans, we are really big on anticipatory grief. And we look at our pets and we're weepy and we're crying and we're not enjoying our time with them because we're already in the they're gone. And I tell people, like one of mine who got cancer, it was really bad cancer. We lost her very quickly. But in the 8 weeks that we had, every day we got up and said, "What's Myra want to do today?" Myra went to the park. Myra went out to lunch. Myra went to the pet stores. Myra got to attack squeaky dinosaurs. And so when we did have to let her go after 8 weeks, people said, "Oh, you've gotta be so sad." And I'm like, "Actually, I have no regrets." Like, every day was joy with her and enjoying the time with her, and if I needed to cry, I went somewhere else. Like, I'm not gonna say like, the dog is just like, "Oh, why are you upset?" They don't live in that world. They live in the, "What's for dinner? What are we doing? I love you." And so we can take some really good lessons from them.
Beautiful. I really love that. Great. This has been an awesome conversation. I so much appreciate all of the recommendations, and my cat's getting a new diet going forward for sure. And I'm ordering from your website. And just so the listeners know where they can find more, because there are tons of beautiful articles and guides, and there's like a university, there's got so many great things happening. So if people want to find you, where can they find you?
naturallyhealthypets.com. And we are on just about every social media platform as well. We put out a ton of content, and it's really just coming from the heart that we want to educate you to keep your pets happy, healthy, and thriving, and really enjoy your time with them and not spend all your time running back and forth to the vet with chronic illnesses. That's just no fun for anybody.
Mm. Thank you so much, Judy.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks to Judy for that great podcast. I really appreciated her view on natural pet health. I learned a lot about how I'm going to care for my own cat personally. I know most of us have these animal beings in our lives, and what I realized is that I need to approach my animal's health in the same way that I approach my own health, looking for high quality foods, organic when possible, and really caring for my pet and looking outside of the corporate world of cat food and animal food and even animal health. It was just great to talk to her and to get her perspective, because I've only talked to veterinarians that are more mainstream, and I realized how important it is to look for other naturally informed professionals in this realm. So it was really great. I really appreciated it. And I hope you did too. If you like this podcast, please subscribe. And I would love a review. It really helps us with the algorithms. If you could just take a quick moment and pop a thumbs up, or a couple words of encouragement would be really great. I know it's not something we normally do when we're listening to podcasts to then stop and leave a review, but it would really help. If you have any comments or feedback, please send them my way. I'm always interested in what the audience is thinking about and what their perception is of the particular topic. We have some great guests coming up in May. I'm really excited. So please stay tuned, and I look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. Ho, ho.